Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Welcome back to Philippine Politics and Governance. Today, we will talk about the electoral system and political parties in the Philippines. The main objective of this lesson is for the learners to analyze the nature of elections and political parties in the Philippines. Please click on the subscribe button and like this video. If you have questions, please write them on the comment section. Thank you. Elections are given importance since they are the mechanism through which citizens are able to express their right to choose their leaders. It stands out since it is the democratic exercise of the citizens' right to be involved in government affairs. Therefore, as citizens, we must have knowledge of the electoral process, how candidates and voters interact throughout his process, and the various agencies and groups that play role in the elections. By understanding the electoral process and our role in it, we will be able to help address the challenges and issues that affect elections in our country. Election is the formal decision-making process by which citizens choose public officials. The right to participate in elections is called suffrage. As stated in Article 5 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution, suffrage not only refers to the right to vote, but also the right to run for office. In order to become a registered voter, an individual must be at least 18 years old and a resident of the Philippines for at least a year, or at least 6 months in the district or place he or she wishes to vote. There are different functions of elections in a democratic government. Perhaps the first and foremost function is to uphold the essence of democracy by letting people select and vote for the officials that will govern them. Elections also gives way to recruiting political leaders. By doing elections, we get to draft varied political candidates from the population, and this can diversify, improve and enhance the state of governance within a government. Moreover, as diverse political leaders are instated as government officials, we get to make a government that actually works for the common good and the welfare of the citizens. By giving people the right to run for office, they are providing representation for their people or their community. This also allows for them to influence policy making that is more focused on current or long-standing problems that are experienced by the people. Elections can also be a venue to educate voters as well as future voters on the electoral system of the country. They will be able to understand the importance of election towards the freedom and democratic state that they are living in and its effect towards their daily lives. Lastly, by allowing citizens the right to run for office and to vote for the officers that will hold positions in the government, this builds a legitimate government that has the power to govern the sovereign of this state, which is the Filipino citizens. Electoral system. An electoral system is a set of rules that governs the conduct of elections. According to Oxford Reference, an electoral system is any set of rules whereby the votes of citizens determine the selection of executives and/or legislators. From questions pertaining to how elections should be conducted to how a candidate wins, elections are guided by an electoral system. Common electoral systems. The following are the most common electoral systems practiced throughout the world. 1. Plurality system. An electoral system where the candidate who gets the most number of votes is elected into office. This is the electoral system generally followed in Philippine elections. For example, whichever presidential candidate who gets the highest number of votes is elected for that position. 2. Proportional representation. An electoral system where the candidate must gain a required number of votes or quota in order to be elected into office. This system ensures that all sectors and groups in the state gain representation in government. This electoral system is applied in the election of the party list representatives to the Philippine Congress. In order to gain a seat in the House of Representatives, a party list must gain at least 2% of the total votes cast for the party list system. Those groups who gain more than 2% of the vote are entitled to a seat in the House, for a maximum of 3 seats per party. 3. Runoff system. Elections are held in stages to determine eventual winners. Some countries implement a 2-round runoff election, where a preliminary election is held where all candidates participate, and a second round of voting where only the top 2 candidates participate. France and Germany are some of the countries which use this system. Other countries implement the instant runoff voting, where there is only one election where voters rank the candidates in their ballots. During the vote counting, the top-ranked candidates are identified, and the number of votes cast for them are determined. The highest-ranked candidate with the most number of votes cast in his or her favor is then declared the winner. Australia uses this system but refers to it as preferential voting. Ireland use this system as well but refer to it as single transferable vote. 4. Primary system. Also conducts elections in stages. A preliminary election, or primary, is conducted within political parties to determine their candidates who will run in the general election. These primaries can either be closed, where only official party members are allowed to participate, or open, where other citizens who are not party members may choose to participate in the primary in their chosen party. Primaries are also classified as direct or indirect. Direct. In this particular classification, voters directly choose the party candidate. Indirect, on the other hand, voters elect delegates, who then convene to choose the party candidate. Election code and election organizations in the Philippines. The electoral process here in the Philippines is extensively discussed through the Batas Pambansa Bilang 881, or the Omnibus Election Code. This code contains all of the rules governing the conduct of elections in the Philippines, including qualifications for aspiring candidates, and dates important to the election process. It also contains provisions on the role of the Commission on Elections, COMELEC, the main constitutional commission overseeing elections in the country, and decides on all matters concerning electoral process. The primary goal of COMELEC is to ensure the conduct of free, fair and honest elections. COMELEC is separated from the three branches of the government. During the election period, COMELEC is authorized to supervise and control all government agencies, public officials and government employees whose duties are related to the conduct of the elections. It can also direct the police and armed forces to secure areas where election-related violence is rampant. There are also organizations who serve as election watchdogs to ensure that elections are free from corruption and other illegal transactions. The Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting or PPCRV serves as citizens' arms of the COMELEC. It is non-partisan and independent from any government agency, with members coming from various sectors of society. The National Citizens Movement for Free Elections or NAMFREL, is under direct control of COMELEC. They conduct information dissemination, campaigns and organize forums involving the election candidates. They are also obliged to inform COMELEC of violations during election, and does parallel counting of votes in order to monitor proper results of the elections. The Philippine electoral process. Philippine elections are held both at the national and local levels. The election process involves the participation of both the candidates and the voters. The candidate expresses his formal intention of running for a position by filing his certificate of candidacy or COC to the COMELEC. Not everyone who files COC gets a spot on the electoral race. COMELEC checks all of the aspiring candidates and their requirements. Some of them are considered nuisance candidates are disqualified. Other ground for disqualification are bribery of voters, engaging in acts of violence and terrorism, receiving donation from foreign governments, and engaging in black propaganda against a fellow candidate. The voter on the other hand needs to register to their local COMELEC offices. The qualifications that needs to be met are, first age. Should be 18 years and above. A resident of the country for the last year. A resident of the place where he or she will be voting for at least 6 months. And not disqualified by law, with records such as imprisoned for at least a year without pardon or amnesty, committed crimes against national security, or deemed mentally incapable to vote. COMELEC then releases the list of official candidates, and the campaign period starts. For different positions, the number of days for campaign period varies as well. For president and vice president has 90 days to campaign. For positions within the Congress and other local government seats, they have 45 days of campaign period. For barangay elections, They only have 15 days of campaigning. Those who are unable to vote in their respective localities on the day of the elections may apply for absentee voting. Absentee voters include people who need to perform vital tasks on election day, such as public officials and employees, military and police officers, and journalists and other media workers. Overseas Filipino workers ROFWs may also apply for absentee voting to help them avoid the inconvenience of returning to the country to participate in the elections. They vote 1 week earlier than the rest of the voting public. Conduct of the elections. So, what happens on election day? In the Philippines, the Constitution has set the second Monday of May as the election day, while barangay and sangguniang kabatuan elections take place on the last Monday of October. Since 2010, the COMELEC has implemented the use of the automated election system for the elections. The AES has several components. One of these is the vote counting machines or VCMs, which are also known as the precinct count optical scan or PCAS machines. Automated elections are expected to result in faster and more accurate vote counting in contrast to traditional procedures we have been using previously. Polling precincts are located in designated elementary and secondary schools in each barangay. In these polling precincts, voters fill out their ballots with their choices for each position from the local to the national level. These ballots are then entered into the VCMs for data recording. These vote counts generated by the VCMs are referred to as election returns or ERs. After the votes for the specific precinct are counted, these are documented as certificates of canvass, which are certified by the Board of Election Inspectors or BEI, composed of the assigned public school teachers and other volunteers. The BEI facilitates the voting in the precincts, and is assisted by poll watchers from the NAMFREL, PPRCV and political parties. These poll watchers observe the conduct of polls and are authorized to file complaints regarding any violations or issues regarding voting procedure. After the BEI certifies the tallied election returns, these are then transmitted to the other servers, which are all part of the automated election system. These are the central server or the server assigned to the COMELEC, the transparency server or the server assigned to the election watchdog organizations, political parties, and the media, and the Municipal Board of Canvassers or MBOC. In the case of Metro Manila, the election returns are transmitted to the City Board of Canvassers or CBOC, instead of the MBOC. An additional special case is that of Taguig Patiros. They are jointly referred to as one legislative district for the elections. Thus, the election returns from Taguig and Patiros reach the District Board of Canvassers or DBOC. The election returns that reach the MBOC are now transmitted to the Provincial Board of Canvassers or PBOC server, which gathers the election returns from each municipality, and then transmits them to the National Board of Canvassers or NBOC. In the case of the CBOC and the DBOC, they immediately transmit the election returns to the NBOC. Meanwhile, in the BARM, the election returns are transmitted to the Regional Board of Canvassers or RBOC, before reaching the NBOC. All of these election returns also reach the central server. The COMELEC acts as the NBOC for the senatorial and party list representative elections, while the Congress acts as the NBOC for the presidential and vice presidential elections. If problems were encountered in the usage of the vote counting machines, the certificates of canvass, which contain manually counted votes, may be physically delivered to the NBOC. The canvassing of the election returns takes place within a few days to a month. After this, the winners are officially proclaimed, and are later sworn into office. Political parties in the Philippines. A political party is a group of people that is formally organized for the purpose of winning government power through electoral or other means. It links the state and civil society, the institutions of the government, and the groups and interests that operate within the society. A political party is also a voluntary association of individuals who advocate, certain principles or policies and nominates and supports some of its leaders as electoral candidates. Characteristics of political parties. The following are characteristics of parties that distinguish them from other groups. 1. They aim to exercise government power by winning seats in the government. That is why political parties in the Philippines usually have representative especially for national positions. 2. They are formally organized bodies with card-carrying membership. Membership involves taking a formal oath. 3. They adopt a broad issue focus and address major areas of government policy. Most of the members are concerned citizens with expertise in different fields and thus have knowledge on such issues and policy making. 4. They are united by shared political preferences and ideological identity to varying degrees. For example, a certain political party in the Philippines may not be solidly under the liberalism ideology, but most of their members are inclined towards this ideology or supports this ideology. Functions of political parties. 1. Representation. Refers to the ability of the parties to respond to and articulate the views of members and the voters. Political parties are expected to represent the causes of the people they claim to be supportive of. Here in the Philippines, it is one of the common problems known to political parties. In comparison to other countries' political parties, Philippines political parties usually get as much problems and support as many people as they can to get more support from the masses. This takes away their capability of focusing and actually helping one group. If they can do it one group or one problem at a time, then that would be better. Second, elite formation and recruitment. Political parties provide a training ground for politicians. It is through these groups that politicians become equipped with skills, knowledge, and experience needed in carrying out their functions. Parties then provide leaders for the state. Goal formation. With members who are like-minded and are experts in their own fields with varying degrees of power and influence in the society, political parties are a good venue to form short-term and long-term goals for the country or a specific community. It actually depends on the concern or determination of a political party, since they can do such initiatives even if they do not have a member on the high-ranking positions in the government. Interest articulation and aggregation. Political parties help articulate various interests in a society by developing collective goals. These interests are then aggregated into a coherent whole, balancing competing interests against each other. Political parties should be the voice of the people who support them and should be able to consolidate problems on a specific area or field and engage discussions in the House of Representatives or Congress. Socialization and mobilization. Political parties serve as agents of political education and socialization through a series of internal debates and discussions, and through campaigning and electoral competition. The issues focused on by political parties set the political agenda, while the values and attitudes they emphasize become part of the larger political culture. Organization of government. Political parties help in the formation of governments. Parties also give governments a degree of stability and coherence. Political parties in the Philippines are instrumental in the creation of an administration. The creation of majority or dominant parties after the election period highlights the creation of an administration. Whatever is part of the administration not becoming the opposition. We can all still work if we put the common good of the nation our first priority in governance. Major political parties in the Philippines. There are many political parties in the Philippines. These are only major ones. First, PDP Laban Party or Philippine Democratic Party People's Power. Some of the basic principles of PDP Laban Party is belief in God, the Supreme Being, humanism, enlightened nationalism, democratic socialism and consultative and participatory democracy. The Liberal Party or LP. LP is widely known as the Liberalists and Centrists. However, LP has been historically evaluated as conservative party and can be under social liberalism as well. The party values freedom, justice and solidarity. The Nacionalista Party of Nationalist Party. It is the oldest political party in the Philippines and in Southeast Asia in general. It is responsible for leading the country throughout the majority of the 20th century since its founding in 1907. The party has a conservative tendency but has been evaluated to be populist recently. The Nationalist People's Coalition or NPC, founded in 1992. It is stated that they are under the political ideology of conservatism. However, in the past few years, there has been a lack of clear goal from the political party. The HUMSS CMD party. Founded in 1991, this party has been greatly influenced by Christian democracy and Islamic democracy. This party HUMSS CMD has been focusing on economic growth and development, and has created stronger ties with the United States of America. It is known for its advocacy of a shift from the present presidential system to a parliamentary form of government through constitutional amendments and through establishing peace talks with Muslim separatists and communist rebels. Common issues and challenges in the current electoral system and political parties of the Philippines. First, representation and integration are not fully achieved. With our political parties having vague and a catch-all characteristic, it is quite difficult for them to focus on one problem or one group of people. They tend to catch all problems and issues in order to gain massive support. However, once seated in position, with too much promises made to the masses, it has become quite difficult to focus on specific project or program. On the point of representation as well. Since most of the people being elected to high-ranking positions are the same names that are influential within political parties or wealthy families. Domination of the economic and political elites, including political dynasties and clans, are still rampant. Especially in the case of local elections. You will be able to see entire families running for different positions in the office. Father, mother, son and daughter in a single family running for different positions within a congressional district. In some extreme cases, family feuds are even brought out during elections, and some of these result to violence which takes lives not just of their family members, but of innocent civilians as well. Another issue is how our political parties are quite similar. Although they are under different political ideologies, but their platforms seem to revolve in broad topics, which makes only mainstream policies and problems to be taken into account. Problems of small people are still unheard, and capitalists and economic elites are still accommodated, and the cycle goes on, and nothing is changed in our country. Similar standpoints also increase likelihood of party transfers or political turncoatism. From this, political butterflies arise. These political butterflies not just create confusion amongst politicians but also to the voters and citizens in general. Moreover, political parties in the country tend not to play a leading role in policy making, even if they are parties of notables. Having experts as members in a political party, and yet, only few political parties create initiatives and focus on actual change instead of giving more time to building images and reputation for the prospect political candidates. Lastly, popularity politics is still strong and works every time. Actors, actresses, and other influential public figures who, sometimes, are not even qualified to be in a certain position, still win in national and local elections just because they are known. Just because they are loved by the masses. Also, this is quite difficult to admit, but popularity politics in the Philippines is so rampant that sometimes, a person wins just because of his or her good looks. Because he looks intellectual, she looks innocent, he looks like he could be a leader, she looks professional, he looks like a man of action. Forgetting that these politicians have groups of people behind them that works on their photo shoots, on their wardrobe during campaigns, and even creates persona for them to portray in order to win sympathy from voters. I hope we can lessen this, in the future, and actually research on platforms and previous works of a certain political candidate. That is the end of our lesson for today. Thank you for watching. See you in the next lesson.